Going to Classic WoW is always refreshing. Hardcore takes it to another intensity by making any giving moment your last. The community is filled with more giving and patient players. The biggest plus for Hardcore is the people die. You'll never be stuck in a low level with no one to dungeon with, because the community is always refreshing. And that in itself is kind of refreshing. You'll never feel like you're in a dead server when everyone else is at level 60 doing the raids and you're just kind of coming home from work only getting to play for another 2 hours and you just want to build your professions that time. On top of this, it makes players a lot more friendly. In a weird way, when I was trying to do my rogue mission, I had people just sitting there helping make sure I don't die as I continued to not be able to pickpocket the goblin over and over again due to the fact that I didn't fully understand the quest. And even though I was messing up, I had players that were like, yeah, it can be tricky, don't worry, we got you. On the other hand, whenever they have these chests that are constantly spawning enemies next to them, and if you stay there, you're essentially going to die and it's near impossible to get the chest. I had one person that would go out of their way to kind of steal it from us, go out, make sure that we didn't get the chest. But then whenever we had the chance, we helped someone out. We said, hey, go get it. We know how hard it is to get these chests. Have at it. They wanted to share with us some of the loot that they got from the chest. It's just brings back that shared experience, that shared world experience, that the reason why we go and play World of Warcraft in the first place. Then there's the dying. And that in itself requires the utmost patience. That's probably why this is gonna just harbinger just a more niche group of players. Playing with my wife is nice. It's probably my preferred way of playing. I always have someone to go with, makes questing easier. We can do a little more riskier stuff without having to worry about taking things a lot slower than normal people would have to. And yet, she still died. And it was fine the first time. We were expected. I thought she would die, or one of us would die at the start of a dungeon, but then she died again. And I realized, man, World of Warcraft turned into a roguelike. But whenever she died, I just re-rolled my character. I realized there's plenty of characters I haven't tried in WoW. There's plenty of starting zones I haven't tried, considering how much of a casual I am. Cool, let's just try out new things, try out new questing areas. But I guess if it's too frequent, the punishment system really takes over, especially if you hit those higher levels like 40. 50, even 60, then you start to really feel everything that you've lost in the process. It is nice whenever someone hits 60, people are constantly hitting 60 and you get the cheer from it. But whenever you're grinding, that piece of fulfillment starts to feel like it's dwindling. Now, this is interesting because usually when it comes to challenging versus punishing systems, I tend to lean towards challenging. I say games should be more challenging instead of punishing. And what does that really mean? What's the difference between challenging and punishing? For layman's terms, or to put it as simply as I can in this analogy, basically a challenging system is lean more towards while you're playing. So if you're fighting a boss, the boss can be as challenging as possible, whereas a punishment is what happens when you die to that boss. And I think when you compare things, like if you're Souls-like fans, whenever you compare the old Souls games to Elden Ring puts the campfires right in front of the boss room. So the punishment of dying to a boss isn't as severe as before, where you had to run to the bosses. And if I could compare this to MMOs, it's kind of like Final Fantasy and World of Warcraft. In Final Fantasy, the raids, you just sit right there in the raid boss. If you wipe, you go back and you try immediately again. In World of Warcraft, you have to run through the raid room again, and you have to clear through the trash mobs. And sure, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, and that time adds up every time you wipe and you're trying to learn a raid. When it comes to classic WoW, there is a constant source of fulfillment. Dare I say that this hardcore system doesn't work as well as in retail, which is interesting because now they're putting these classic hardcore systems into kind of the retail classic space. Next, we're going to be in TBC, then it's probably going to be hardcore Wrath, then it's going to be hardcore Cataclysm. And whenever I say that it doesn't work in the retail space, my theory is the fact that, well, you don't get as much fulfillment in retail. At times, playing through current retail feels a lot like a chore. You get on, you level up really fast, you get gear, and most of the gear is just a way for you to sell it so you can make money, whereas like the gear in Classic is a way for you to continue to progress through the questing. Retail is all about getting to max level as fast as possible and experiencing endgame as soon as possible and as much as possible. Whereas Classic is more like the journey to 60, the journey and experiencing the shared world with other people and finding those moments among the mayhem or the questing just through mundane situations like picking up or killing off 5 things. Because sometimes a quest might be harder, or you might have to delve into a cavern because your quest asks you to do so, but the mobs spawn a lot closer to each other. And because they spawn a lot closer to each other, you're unable to take on more than 2 at a time. And you see someone else struggling and you party up, and the next thing you know, you're trading potions, you're trading profession things that you work on together. Maybe they invite you to the guild. Now you're with an even bigger community. In retail, there's never that moment of struggle. The only time you struggle is at endgame in dungeons when you're already in an instance with other people. Therefore, there's not really this shared experience that's no different than playing like a multiplayer game like Overwatch or Call of Duty. You're with them for a moment. Oh, that group sucked. Leave them. If you get someone that's really good, maybe 1 out of every 10, 15, 20 times, you add them. So, will hardcore survive in this niche community once it hits the more fast-paced retail? I don't know. As I know right now, this perspective, this experience, even though I myself thought hardcore wasn't going to be that great, I had such a good time playing it. It's really more focused on fulfillment, just progressing and progressing and progressing. And if you died early on, maybe it was to Murlocs. Maybe you learned your lesson and you took it a little slower. Maybe you broke out of your shell and asked a friend to play with you. And seeing you pass that level you didn't pass before, and considering that there are plenty of casuals like myself that didn't start playing WoW till Kata, or maybe they were just on and off a lot, they still haven't experienced the world of Azeroth, and this is a cool way of experiencing it. Especially since it always makes sure that there's people in the world to share this experience with. So, if you haven't tried hardcore, I recommend it. If it's not for you, maybe watch someone else play. See what you might get out of it. Until next time, guys, play nice. Hey, I'm Mario. I like playing video games, watching movies, and Dungeons and Dragons. If you keep getting me in your suggested videos, or you're watching this video right here, consider subscribing. It goes a long way. Thank you.